Hi, I'm Dan Costa, he is Sascha Segan, and this is PCMag Live. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the top tech news of the day. We're going to pull one cool thing off the shelf in the lab, not a new thing, and we're going to answer some of your reader questions. Let's talk about the big story of today, and that's this is the 30th anniversary of the Mac. 30 years ago, Steve Jobs got on stage and unveiled the Mac, and I watched the video again today. I've watched it many times. It is amazing how much that first video precedes and sort of foreshadows all of these other Steve Jobs announcements. He was a showman then, he's a showman now, and he unveiled a product that really, I mean, the crowd loved it. Nobody had seen anything like it before.
I've just been having so much fun with this anniversary because I've been using Macs for 27 years, and I have a column up there on PCMag right now going through my 27-year history, creating things with the Mac. And one of the things I wanted to show off actually today was over here. This is not our one cool thing. That is the one cool thing.
This does not look like a Mac. It says Dell on it, and I know they for a little while you could get Macs from other vendors, but Dell was never one of those people.
No, but if you are at all nostalgic about the history of the Mac, if you're curious about the history of the Mac, really this groundbreaking first mainstream GUI computer, and I'm so getting killed in this game right now, then you can download this little emulator. It's freeware called Mini VMac. And you get some old Mac system software from somewhere else on the net. There's this collection of old shareware games called System 6 Hell that you can Google for. And then you just can turn any current computer into an old Mac. This Dell here is basically a Mac Plus. And so I'm running System 6. I'm going to quit this game of Dungeon of Doom I'm playing. God, I killed so many hours with that game.
It's important. I mean, a lot of people think that the Mac was really, the Apple really invented the graphical user interface. That's not exactly the case, but they were one of the first people to really popularize it and make it mainstream.
Well, I mean, that's been the Apple story all along. If you look at Apple's history with technologies since the Mac, they were almost never. I'm not going to say never because like a rain of Apple fanboys is going to come down on my head. Exactly. But I'll just say they were usually not the first company with X technology. What they were was a company that was really good at popularizing technology and smoothing the edges off of technology and making technology mainstream. So like the classic story about the Mac is, of course, a lot of these technologies, the windows, the icons, the mice, are from Xerox PARC. And then we saw them in Apple's Lisa, which was the unsuccessful Apple computer before the Mac. But the Mac was what caused them to really take off. And then you got you got other windowing systems like in the Amiga and the Atari ST. You got Microsoft Windows. You got Windows and mice and icons going everywhere, and this whole explosion of graphical computing from the text-based interfaces we had up until then.
Yeah, but we've got more on this, obviously, on PCMag. Pretty much everybody on staff has a Macintosh story. We share a lot of them online. You can sort of piece it together and see the rise of the Macintosh, the fall of the Macintosh, which is also in there, and then, of course, the rebirth. All of that's on PCMag.com.
We got some rebirth right over here. We'll talk about it later.
We do. There's other news, though. That's it. I've read the headline today. Microsoft Surface sales are up. In fact, Microsoft reported that it doubled its sales from Q3 to Q4, and it reported $893 million worth of revenue. A lot of that was Surfaces. A lot of it was also Xbox One sales.
Well, no. That's what they reported, I think, just of Surfaces.
Of Surfaces.
They reported more of Xbox, and the Xbox is doing very well. They said they sold 7.6 million Xbox and both Ones and 360s in the quarter. The Xbox is just chugging along. But what you got to see about the Surface thing is that, so they doubled the number of Surfaces sold, $800-something million worth of Surfaces, but it cost $900 million to make and market those Surfaces. So Surfaces are still a money-losing proposition for Microsoft. And I think, I mean, you know my opinion, a lot of it is still around the confusion about Windows RT, and once that edge is smoothed off the ecosystem and they go down from 3 operating systems to 2 operating systems, I think then the Surface is really going to start to take off.
And we are seeing, I think what also happened in Q4 last year was that this idea that you're getting 2 devices in one was something that should have been the marketing message a year ago when the Surface 1 launched. They sort of caught it onto it with the Surface 2, and Intel's backing them up with that push as well. And this idea of getting two devices for the price of one, or getting two devices for the price for 1.5, which is probably what it's closer to, that's starting to catch on with consumers, and I think that's actually a winning strategy for them.
Well, I mean, a bunch of new chipsets are also really helping the Surface lineup. NVIDIA's Tegra 4 in the Surface 2 was better than the Tegra 3 in the original Surface, and Intel's Bay Trail, which I don't think we've seen that in a Surface yet. We haven't seen that in a Surface, but I really think that is the inflection point for Windows tablets.
Yep. We'll look forward to it in the Surface 3, I predict. Also in the news, and this is not a huge surprise, Neiman Marcus announced that they were breached in the fall about the same time as Target, but they didn't give a lot of details about how many people were vulnerable. Now they have 1.1 million credit cards have been compromised between July 16th and October 30th, and at least 2,400 cards have actually had fraudulent charges on them.
This is the greatest, I think this is the greatest financial security nightmare that most Americans can have, because there is nothing you can do to save yourself.
Except not use your credit card.
Except not use your credit card ever. Except like absent yourself from the entire economic structure of our society.
Which there are plenty of people doing. And the thing is, you know, Target obviously has had this vulnerability. They announced it. Neiman Marcus has. The FBI reports this is not going to be the end of this. There are many other retailers that could be compromised. There will be more. This will happen again. I guarantee you there'll be a story next week. A retailer announces that they've been breached as well.
What it comes down to is sign up for a credit protection service. We've said this any number of times on the show. Target offered it for free to affected consumers. Neiman Marcus is offering one for free to affected consumers. Don't wait until your credit card is stolen and it's offered to you for free. That is a false economy. Yep. Sign up for a credit protection service. Make sure no one is stealing your identity.
Let's move on to a reader question now. We got a question today from Bill, who asked via email, what phones have the best voice quality for senior citizens? And you might think that voice quality is voice quality, but actually senior citizens have some different needs.
Yeah, I mean, I generally find that when I'm talking to people about voice quality, senior citizens often have a larger emphasis on sheer volume than some other people. I find younger people actually really like greater dynamic range, but as you get older, the high frequencies in your hearing get clipped off, and then as you get older, your hearing gets clipped in general in terms of volume. So the two phones I'm recommending right now in terms of voice quality for senior citizens are the Samsung Galaxy S4, which also has a really nice easy mode for the Android interface. Very powerful phone, but in easy mode, relatively simple to use and great voice quality. And the Kyocera Torque on Sprint, which has this very interesting technology where it can conduct the audio through your face, rather than...
Don't worry, it does not hurt.
Yeah, rather than into your ear. And from what I've heard, some reports, that can help some people with hearing loss. But also, another thing to think about is that if you mostly make calls on a family plan between people on the same carrier, look into T-Mobile phones that have HD voice. HD voice on T-Mobile allows for a greater dynamic range, much clearer calls, but it only works right now to other T-Mobile HD voice phones, so it won't work to call landlines or anything like that.
Very cool. Now it's time for one cool thing. We test thousands of products here in the lab in New York City. Every day we take one thing off the shelf and show it to you.
We're not testing this.
We have tested this. We already tested this product. We actually spent a long time looking for the original Macintosh down in the basement in the lab. We looked everywhere. We could not find it. It was here, I promise. But we had to settle for this, 1998. This is the Bondi Blue iMac, and it's a fantastic and iconic system. This actually represented sort of the reinvention of the Macintosh brand.
Yeah, from between 1993 about and 1997, Apple was on a crazy downhill slide. It had a bunch of different CEOs, Michael Spindler, Joe Emilio, and it proliferated this huge number of products, confusing product lines. There was the clone saga. Now I feel like I'm talking about Star Wars. But then they rehired Steve Jobs in 1997. They bought his company Next. And the first product that Steve Jobs brought out as the new, once again, leader of Apple was this. And it was this statement of simplicity and clarity and design elegance, and it doesn't have a floppy drive. Wow, was that controversial.
That was revolutionary at the time. And what I didn't realize until I was reading some of our own coverage is that this was a Johnny Ive design product. So it was really the birth of the modern Apple, where design was going to be just as important as what was inside. They were going to work together and really create this sort of emotional resonance with consumers, and it worked.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, the iMac was what began the rebirth of Apple, and it was a successful product. I mean, obviously, it was not the most successful PC of its time, but it was a successful enough product to help Apple take off into the land that created the iPod and the iPhone and the iPad and where it is today. This iMac here is running Mac OS 9.2, which was one of the last versions before the Unix-based Mac OS 10, which we're running even still today. And what I loaded up here is one of Apple's failed software products, CyberDog. In the mid-90s, Apple had all of these crazy ideas of how to do the internet, things like CyberDog and OpenDoc, and all these weird little software experiments that didn't quite pan out. But Steve Jobs really thinned things out and streamlined it and brought Apple back.
Obviously, we could talk about Macintosh for a very, very long time, but we don't want to. You can read more about these stories on PCMag.com. We've got a ton of great coverage out there. That is PCMag Live for today. Leave us your comments in the section. If you've got a great Macintosh story, leave it in our comments section. We will address them next week. Thanks for tuning in.